What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Save Point Podcast, episode 22. I am one of your hosts, Alex, and I'm joined, as always, by Sway. And we're doing something a little bit different, but we're very excited, for this episode. We want to do a Star Wars Jedi Survivor spoiler cast. So, we'll be reviewing it. I definitely want to hear Sway's thoughts. You've heard mine on the main channel on that video, so I really want to get into how Sway thought of the whole game. But we want to center this on the spoilers, some of the bigger moments and kind of flesh that out. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with the biggest, the things that you definitely want to turn away from if you haven't beaten the game yet. I don't know why you would click on a spoiler cast video if you haven't beaten it. But, Sway, when I think of this game and I think of like the big moments, there's probably at least two that jump to mind, and it's Vader and then it's Bode's, turn. So where do you want to start? You want to start with Darth Vader? I mean, that was kind of epic.
Vader was like the moment he came on screen, it was I was like, oh my god. I didn't have a spoil for me or nothing.
Yeah.
I was able to dodge it.
Yeah.
And I was expecting I think it helped that I was expecting something else like a Darth Maul or something like that. So when
Yeah.
he came back, I was like, oh, I truly didn't expect this. You
Yeah.
did this the first game, but because I genuinely didn't expect this, it's epic all over again.
Yeah. I
And
kind of
he was just menacing.
I talked myself out of Vader being in it. I made like a
Pretty
theory.
much same.
Yeah. I thought it was definitely possible, but I made the theory video and it's like, well, it makes sense. It definitely may, because you can't be doing the stuff that these guys are doing without attracting attention, right? So it absolutely makes sense. But then it's like, well, you just did it, and it was such a big moment, and you don't want it to define your games, right? Like that's something that you probably don't want, and I don't think it does. I think this only like enhances it, but it doesn't make or break the game. I think like the themes and the overall story, that's what does it, but it doesn't hurt. Having Vader in it definitely helps the thing. So I thought that maybe they would almost like, in their meetings, they'd like talk themselves out of it, and they'd say, well, we just did it. Like maybe we do have Maul. And there was the rumor. Another thing, by the way, I hate to do this, but Special Nick, which is the leaker that said Darth Maul, Sly Cooper, he got wrong. Darth Maul, he gets a lot of stuff wrong. So I just want to kind of put him on blast just for a second there. As soon as like Marin was talking about Dathomir, and I sensed we were not, really going to explore that much, I figured Maul was not going to be in this game. And same thing with Obi-Wan. Kind of like really early on, I was like, this isn't happening. But Vader, now did you so here's the thing. When the Empire gets called, right? So Bode calls in the Empire, and then when you chase him, which by the way, that was an insane. The speeder bike was freaking amazing. So when you catch up to him and he says, you got to head back because like there's a huge threat. Like if you got to save your family. When he said that, I did think Darth Vader. So when Seer goes into the archives and then like the door, I was like, Vader's gonna walk through that door. So I didn't predict it going into the game, but when Bode tells him that there is something like you're gonna want to focus your attention on and not me, when he told Cal that, I was like, Darth Vader's here. Did you get the same sense?
For sure. The moment the Empire was called,
Yeah.
even before he said that, if the Empire is coming, especially in this timeline, it's
Yeah.
Vader. Palpatine's not coming. Maul is actually hiding from the Empire just like everybody else. So it would only be Vader or an Inquisitor or Palpatine who just really wouldn't do it. He's in Vader.
Yeah.
So that's why I felt like, okay, this is round two. But I thought that was more the fact that and then when they said that line and we kept chasing them,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we're not going to be like, Kyle isn't going to see him.
Right.
Because before they said that, I thought he was actually luring Kyle to Vader.
Oh, okay.
But once they said it, I was like, okay, so then he's not gonna be there, which means that's perfect because then it would be like I would even be like, okay, he escaped Vader twice. That's kind of
that's a good point. Yeah. I love to death how they did it. Like it makes some people are saying, Seer beats Vader, and some people are a little, upset by that. I think it makes sense. I think Vader is not perfect, and Seer is a very powerful, Jedi. And she literally says, what does she say? Like, I've been waiting for this, or I've been training for, like she's been preparing, like the last 5 years. You imagine she's been ready for this kind of moment, and she doesn't destroy Vader as much as, say, like Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan show. Like, she doesn't cut his mask, or even Ahsoka, right? So she does a lot of damage to him, but she doesn't, like, and at the end of the day, he kills her, right? Did you, like, I thought, as soon as he walks through the door, first thing is Seer's dead. But then as the fight's going on, I'm thinking, well, maybe she can escape. Like, I don't know how, but, like, obviously Vader would need to pull off, and then she can run away. And then, obviously, as soon as she really got him, and then she goes in for the lunging, jumping attack, which was maybe, on armchair quarterbacking it, not the right move to do something like that. I was like, okay, it's over. So what was your journey of, like, belief? Did you believe she was going to die the whole time, or, up and down? What would you think?
I think coming into the game, I really was under the impression that her or Grease was going to die.
Same.
So I was right with you with that.
Yeah.
And
and I got it.
yeah, we got it. And I was as the story progressed, I was like, I don't think that Grease is going to be the one to die. He's just never putting himself in danger.
Once he was like the Mantis's captain again, I was like, oh, you actually can't kill him. He's safe.
And once Seer was alone and that line was dropped, I'm like, yeah, because there's no way, like, and the reason why I wasn't too mad at that about the damage she put in on Vader is because we got to remember, especially if I don't know how many people are familiar with the Star Wars comics and the books that take place in between the original series.
Expanded universe.
Yeah. But Vader actually took a while to get used to his mechanical suit. As to before, when he was Anakin in Revenge of the Sith, and my theory was always, if he would have never got chopped up, he would equivocally be the most powerful of all time.
Yeah.
But he had to get used to it, and it took years for him to really come into his own. So when this game takes place, that would be the time that you could get one over on him.
If you think about it, he, in the same year, he's gonna either he already got beaten by Obi-Wan, or he's about to. This is the exact same year as the Obi-Wan show, so I didn't really think about it, but it's like he could just go off a couple months and get destroyed again, or maybe he already did get destroyed, and it could maybe work where he's a little bit weaker. Go on. I just want to throw that in there.
No, yeah, that's a perfect point though to go with what I'm saying is Obi-Wan, whether if it was before or after, destroyed him in this same year.
Yeah,
and so he's not completely. And he was never completely heartless to begin with. But that's only like Ahsoka only got a hit off on him because he had that attachment. Yeah. Same thing with Obi-Wan to a certain extent. There was hatred there, but there was attachment. But there was also a lack of just being used to the suit. And he's not as powerful with the Force as he is in the original trilogy. Yeah. So I wasn't too put off by him being, I'm going to say, almost bested by her. That got across how powerful she was.
Yeah. And
considering how powerful Kyle is, especially by the end of the game.
Oh, yeah.
I think that that makes it even more special of a moment because that kind of gets across how worthy of a master she was to take, the place of Kyle's old master and mentoring and teaching him. And she was very, very, very much a competent master.
Yeah. And I mean, they do it in such short time, but they set it up so well that she's very powerful, right? Because the big moment is Vader, but another huge moment is, and I don't know how you felt. So like when Cal falls, right? He gets shot, he falls, and then he passes out.
I thought I did something wrong.
Yeah, and it says respawn, and I was like, I love this. And then you hit respawn, and then you respawn as Seer. It's like, oh, that's number one, great use of the respawn tool. Number two, immediately then, and if you like the way they do it too is they first start you out with Seer against like pretty weak stormtroopers, and you are just cutting like butter, like just so easily, and it felt so great. And you're also just kind of like getting used to, oh, I'm playing as somebody new, but she's so powerful. And yeah, I mean, I think in terms of getting Cal away from it, like you said, I think that's probably something that had to go through their mind. Cal couldn't have been there. Like, if you have Vader in this game, you can't have it be against Cal a second time.
Mhm.
And it really begs the question for the third game, what are you going to do as well? Because they're going to take the fight to the Empire, right? You're going to train on Tanalorr and then attack the Empire.
And they're intertwined at this point.
Yeah, yeah. So for this, it's like, well, you can't have Cal, like you said, escape or run away twice in a row. So you need somebody else. And I mean, Seer did fight him, but Seer also actually kind of got the best of him in Fallen Order as well. I mean, she's the reason they escaped at the end of the day. So then just having her be the one to fight him, I think made so much sense. And ultimately, he does kill her, so it's not like he loses the fight. He bests her. But some of those cutscenes, like how it's broken up into threes, right? That fight's broken up into thirds. Oh my god! Some of his small little.
Magical.
I don't remember when he started doing this in games, and I think you'll know what I'm talking about. When he does just these really small force moves with his hand. I think it was Obi-Wan against oh god, what was her name? The girl, she turned, the Inquisitor, whatever her name was.
Okay, yeah.
You know her? In the fight with Vader, when he doesn't have a lightsaber, at least at first, right? He's not turning on, he's just dodging. While I hate the dodging, I think that's stupid. He does those really, like, when she will get a strike in on him, he does just a really quick, like, force push, right? He'll twist his hand, and do you know what I'm talking about? Like, he'll do just some really small move with his hand. Against Seer in this game, he does the same thing, which I think is so cool that they're keeping this consistency with him, that she'll go in to strike, he'll block a couple times, and then he'll just do like a really small little force push. I freaking love that. With Cal, I want to talk about the Bode, turn, and we'll get there. But in terms of Cal, I mean, I love him. I think the character growth that he goes through is freaking insane. What did you think about? So some of the highlights I've talked about, really, he gets balanced out by a lot of the other players, a lot of the other gang members, where, Marin is really like his center, right? Like, she talks through to him. She talks him out of situations, but she's like such a great kind of partner, for him. But also this journey, like you said, about balancing this light and dark. So he loses himself like a couple times there. He's also just very like uncertain if he will lose himself. But also this desire, there's a theme, right? So one theme of the game is he just doesn't know how to not fight, right? Like and Seer tells him that, Grease obviously, and that's why they broke up. That's why the gang broke up, is he would not stop, and they really wanted to kind of do their own things, and they handled it differently. I love that theme, and I love that even if you think about it, it gets resolved in a way, because right, he's got a good core, and he's now experienced that darkness, and maybe he's got a better grasp of it. But even like Tanalorr, he wants it originally, or they all want it as like a safe haven, but then pretty quickly it becomes, and it will become, this place to recruit people and train them and then fight. So he still is going to do it, but I think he's got a better core. He obviously told Grease in the beginning that he'll, think about it in terms of like kind of retirement. So what did you think about his journey? Because, as I said in a video a few days ago, he's become, I think, one of the best, not just game Star Wars characters. He's become one of the best well-rounded Star Wars characters, I think, of all time.
Much agree with that. And it helps that the person that they got to play him is a very good actor.
Yeah.
That very much helps, because when you have good writing with good acting, you're going to you're going to really, really, really get something special. I think that's what Kyle Kestis gives us. Even where they're going with his character, at the end of the game, they talked about the path beyond the path, and that's something that the movies and the shows have been mentioning.
Yeah.
So that did nothing more to confirm for me that they do have plans for him in live action.
Yeah.
For sure. I think what's going to happen is they're going to allow the games to play out before. So they're going to wait till the trilogy. They're going to wait till the last game comes out, and then they'll probably start integrating him in live action. And I don't know if he meets his end in the game or in live action. I don't know how they're going to handle that, but I'm assuming there'll be another time jump. So they could kill him off, but if they do a time jump, at least it will be advanced enough in the future where you can kill him off, and then you know what timelines you have to play with.
Right.
Like,
yep.
So that could be an option, or they could have the third game and then do something in live action, and then
I was actually going to ask you about that because, and we've talked about it before. I think we even said it like last week. I'll say it one more time for like the Ahsoka thing. I love Ahsoka, but the idea that these characters, like the Jedi are gone, and now as more of these games come out, you find more and more Jedi are surviving, right? So Cal makes it, Seer makes it, now Bode. He also was a Jedi who made it through, right? So many, and I think it's okay. It's there's so many Jedi. There's tens of thousands of Jedi in like their golden era, and then Order 66, and you lose a lot of them. But to expect that only like 2 or 3 made it, you imagine maybe like 30, 40, 50, 60, like maybe in that range. So that's okay. But as I've talked about with Ahsoka, I don't, especially, it's actually more like Disney. I'm afraid of Disney, because Disney truly doesn't know when to end things, right? So like Ahsoka, maybe because of JJ accidentally, maybe you actually do need to kill Ahsoka if you look at Rise of Skywalker and you think, I never thought she was dead, even when she was talking to Rey. I thought she could still be alive and somehow still do that. But, I mean, if you look at it as she's dead and that's why she was able to speak to Rey, Dave Filoni has to kill her eventually, right? Like canonically. But like that's such a messy, I think, and it's become with Rebels and Clone Wars and all this, it's become a messy situation. I don't want it again with Cal. So I actually, your first pitch, you need to go to EA and you need to do that right now, because I love that. Give it. So we're 10 years out, right? Do 5 more. You would still be before A New Hope. So you're 15 years after Revenge and like a year or 2 or a couple of years before Episode 4, and then kill him. And then you can play with those 5 years in between Survivor and then this third game. And you can do that in live action. But if you don't kill him in 3, I'm going to assume, unless they flat out say it, I'm going to assume Disney had something to do with it. You know what I mean? Where Disney comes in and says, well, we actually are thinking about a movie and a 3-season show and, action figures. And so we're really going to have you not kill him because we want him to live. And then it also becomes, why didn't they do anything in the age of Luke when they really needed to do things in 4, 5, 6? Why did they not? You know what I mean? So Ahsoka, 1 is okay. You can swallow the idea that Ahsoka didn't help. But then when you have Cal and then somebody else, maybe they introduce another Jedi in the third game. You know what I mean? The more Jedi that live, that's okay. But where were they in 4, 5, 6? It just becomes more messy. And so that's, I think, killing him in the third game makes the most sense. And then you play with the in-between years, and that's live action.
That's exactly what I would do. I don't think that Disney's going to do that, though.
Yeah, I really don't.
Because when you think about it, and the more I have pondered on this, I've gotten actually even more upset thinking about it, which is the fact that, could you imagine if we had these same writers, this same story, everything that happened the way that it has, obviously with like a few characters having to change because of time period.
Yeah.
And you had this instead of the sequel trilogy we had.
Yeah.
It is, and when I think about it, it's just like it's going to make it more messier. And I feel because Disney, and they're right, you have a character you can get behind. Finally, you have a character that's mutually liked.
Yeah.
Within most of the Star Wars community, since Disney has owned the IP.
Yeah.
So I think to myself, this is what they should have. This is the direction they should have done. This is the care that they should have had. And because they don't, I feel like they're going to run Kyle Kestis into the ground here.
Yeah.
But I just look at him and I would go, I'm looking at like Mandalore. I'm looking at everything that's going on. I'm like, it should have been him to restart the Jedi Order.
Basically, at this point.
It should have been him and not Rey in this new movie. Rey had so much potential, and then y'all ruined it because y'all wanted to make her the center of everything.
Yeah.
And it's because of those 3 movies that theoretically, until they decanonize it, the first 6 movies do not matter.
Yeah.
Because of everything. It was supposed to be Luke's responsibility to rebuild the Jedi Order. Now it's hers. It was supposed to be Anakin. That was the one. Now it's her. Yeah. It doesn't matter. And that's why I say, like, it is he is a perfect example of what we could have had.
Yeah. More well-rounded. He faces defeat. He loses people. He has to have others help him, Marin specifically, right? Like, he's just a better written character, I think, in literally every way than Rey is. But also, well, you mentioned, Tanalorr. Another last thing we'll say about Cal, and we'll move on to Bode, is like the idea that he wants to use it to recruit and fight the Empire. Doesn't that make it even worse if he doesn't die? So he's literally trying to take the fight, unless he like goes into hiding and stuff. But the idea that he wants to fight, he doesn't really know any other way, unless in the third game is more about like acceptance, that like you can do what you can do, but then you also have to know when to like pull back. Like maybe Grease tells him, hey, you really need to like stop this, and maybe he dies as like a sacrifice or whatever. Because if Cal keeps going, you can't keep attracting attention to yourself like that. In the first 2 games, you're eventually going to get killed. So you have to. Maybe not necessarily you would, but in the timeline, in canon, you would end up, it wouldn't end well for you. So I think that almost makes it worse. That in the next game, you imagine he recruits more people. Maybe he's got a little force and they go, missions and they try to attack the Empire. Eventually, something bad's going to happen. So I can't see how that, how that works.
Yeah, no, same. Only time will tell what Disney's gonna do, but I have the timeline is already messy.
Yeah.
And I'm at the point where if you can decanonize Starkiller,
yeah.
you can do some things to fix this, but it's all gonna depend on how Disney chooses to handle this.
Yeah.
Because right now everybody loves Kyle, but Kyle could easily become that thing that was cool, and then they milked it dry, and everybody gets sick of it.
Yep, for sure. All right, so pivoting to Bode, what did you think? Just about his character. Did you see the turn coming? But also just his character, in general.
I was always skeptical of him, even when I've seen him on the trailer.
Yeah.
Because I look at that and I go like, the moment because he was the one that introduced the blaster to Kyle.
Yeah.
And that is something that, once again, in the religion of Jedi, is frowned upon. But Kyle
it's even frowned upon when he gives it to him in the game. I think Marin and Cal talk about it a little.
Mm-hmm. And even Kyle had his reservations on taking it.
Yeah.
And that was probably the moment where I expected him to turn.
Yeah.
Was the fact that he was the one that introduced that blaster to Kyle. And then it even furthered when he kept trying to pry and, like tell Kyle, like, hey, like, you should get closer to Mary.
Yeah.
She clearly likes you. And that part, he wasn't wrong, because Kyle wants to become his own type of Jedi. He wants to reinvent what it means to be a Jedi. Yeah. And he realizes that everything that the old guard did doesn't work. However, a blaster, you're trying to get him to form attachments. That's telling me you're trying to go all in on the dark side. And the only thing that fooled me to thinking that he was a good character was how hard he went at Dagon.
Yeah,
when they fought.
Yeah.
That is the only thing that got me off the trail.
Yeah,
because it did.
Like looking back at it, I think there was plenty of hints, and I think, and I did notice this a few times. Like if you watch him in some of the scenes when he'll kind of like peel off. Even in, I mean, the animation is really good. Modern day, like you can kind of tell a little bit of like reservation. And I believe even when the compass was fixed, like right before the Empire was called, he's on like the far left of the screen, and he definitely looks like he's kind of like he's almost sad about what he's about to do. But you can kind of get just a really quick glimpse of it, and he walks off the screen to the left, and then the camera goes to the right. And I was like, something's going on with this guy. Like you said, you know, Marin and the blaster. Now, what's interesting? Let me finish the whole like if you look back, yeah, the Dagon thing, it's like, man, looking back at it, he really risked a lot because Dagon was very powerful, and ultimately if Cal didn't like find himself, and I think BD1 kind of, you know, woke him up almost to it, if he didn't do that hallucination trick being Santari, Dagon would have killed both of them. So like looking back, it's like, wow, Bode really went into character because he maybe stood a better chance like using the Force and a lightsaber versus using blasters. They both would have died if Cal didn't win that fight. You know what I mean? Like that, it's a little weird, that one particular scene where it's like, I don't know. I think he maybe would have given himself up right there to save himself.
And this is what tells me, that moment, looking back on that moment tells me that Kyle is a very powerful Jedi.
Yeah.
Because having that amount of faith to put in somebody to keep you and him alive while you still pretend, that tells me that you believed in him. But theoretically, if Kyle died, I would have had a feeling that he would have revealed himself to Dagon. And because he was already a Sith, he would have just probably tried to pledge his allegiance to him.
Yeah.
That would be like my guess to be what his cow route would be. But yeah,
if you think about it, he was so powerful, Bode, that not only, I mean, you know, Cal and Marin talk about how they couldn't sense it. Either could Dagon. Like he pulls the blasters out. Dagon never said, "There's something odd about you." You know, he never said anything. He only said, because Bode was talking about his daughter, you know, being a safe haven. He said, like, you're looking too small. Like, your things are way too small. That's the only thing Dagon said to him. And it's like, not even Dagon could sense that, you know. So, I agree I think Cal would have died, like, right then and there. Bode would, like, Dagon would have walked over to Bode, and then Bode would have said, hey, pulled out the lights. Maybe he would have, like, tried to, maybe he could have gotten, like, a cheap kill, right? His Dagon's not expecting it. He doesn't know he's a Sith, and then he does it. So, so that was definitely cool. One thing, and I want to talk to you about this. So I don't know how much you did. I don't think I found all of them, but I definitely found enough to have like an opinion on it. So when you beat the game, you can go back, and I was doing it, you know, kind of in my trophy collecting thing. And there's a lot of Force echoes that weren't previously there, and a lot of them are on Bode. So I don't know how many of those you found, but you can go back to his quarters on the ship. Yep. You can look around where the Mantis is docked on Kobo, and that's where I found. Yeah, when he's talking to like Denvik and a lot of them, right? The thing, I think it's such a good job with, but I think Bode is a really, really good character. But I'm a little confused, so I want to ask you, like, did he mean it? Like, what did he mean when he was going through this journey? Because I got the sense that he did mean a lot of it in terms of Cal being like a brother or, you know, caring about him. But then, like, in some of those Force echoes, and even in some of the names that the game gives, like deception and stuff, the Marin thing specifically is like, in the moment, I believe it. And even now, I believe it's like, okay, well, he's doing it to get Cal out of the way. So, like, him setting him up with Marin is to get Cal out, and I think he says that in the Force Echo, where this is something, his plan to kind of remove Cal. If he goes with Marin, he's out of the picture. But at the same time, it's manipulation, and I feel like also in that Force Echo, it's, like, fabricated, like, he doesn't really mean it. So I'm pretty conflicted on, like, what... Like, there's a lot of manipulation in what Bode told Cal, but, like, how much of it did he actually mean versus, you know what I mean, versus his own agenda? And I'm still a little kind of in the middle on
it. That's the tricky thing with the dark side. Yeah. I think to answer that question, the best way to look at it would be Anakin before he got chopped. Um, because that is a perfect example of a person caring,
Yeah.
and he is being driven to do this stuff because he cares. And I believe that he cared about Kyle. I believe that he meant every word of what he said. I believe that they legitimately had a bond. There was a few times when he actually saved Kyle.
Yeah.
I believe that all of that was true. But when it came down to it, he had something that he loved more, and that was his
Right.
daughter.
Yeah.
And he's going to do anything to, keep that. And then at the end of the game, when you have to fight him, he has every reason now to feel like he doesn't have to fight. But now he has gotten used to being that person. He has gotten used to being kind of irredeemable. And so to him, he has to go the extra mile now and take everybody out because he feels like as long as he's alive, there's so many uncontrollable variables. So now I got to take it one step further and take over everything.
Yeah.
To make sure that there's truly nothing. And then as I would like, no, not an issue. And as they started fighting, even after he was bested, he still, because once again, Kyle, I believe he meant every word, but then he starts trying to like really kill Marin.
Yeah.
And that's when it became apparent to me that I think, and they never really can like confirm this with the words, but it came off to me as he knew he was going too far. And he felt like he was past the point of redemption.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, he only kept going to fight so Kyle could put him out of his misery.
Ooh, okay.
And that theme was kind of the same thing with Revis, actually. Where after he was beaten, he wanted a warrior's death. I think that Bode realized that he probably wasn't the best influence on his child, to the point where the child was even telling him to stop or please listen to them, and he wouldn't. And where have we seen that before? Padme asking Anakin to listen to Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And he's like, you brought him here to kill me. So it is a lot of things that mirror a lot of things that we've seen. And I just felt like with him, he kind of knew there is no way back, and he probably couldn't look at his kid and go, like, you could ever be proud of me, or you could ever look up to me, or I'm not, and like I said, like they didn't drive that home, but as they were battling, that's kind of what I felt at a certain point. It turned from, I want to take everything over so I can protect my daughter, to I just want to be put out of my misery.
Yeah. I can buy that. I think initially, maybe even still now, I look at it as, well, I think it's like a tragic tale. Like I really love it in that, when Cal goes after him the first time, right, the speeder bike and stuff, it's more of like just confusion. Like, what did you just do? Like, how could you have done this, right? So that was kind of phase one. And then phase two was in the, captain's quarters or whatever on the ship. And it was Bode kind of playing games. Hey, this is my best friend, and we had a fight, but we're going to fix it. And it's like, oh my God, what a great manipulator, right? But then that one's more of like Cal being pretty salty, right? Where he's like, I don't look up to betrayers. That's a bad look on you, and all this stuff. But it's also Bode fleshing out, okay, well, here's why I did it, and here's what happened to me in my past life, my past occupation. So that was kind of phase two. And then, but he betrays him again because he's distracting him, but also then Cal realizes, as Denvik says, Bode literally just did it. So he used Cal as a pawn, right? So Cal would destroy the station. So he didn't like that. And then phase three, again, showing kind of maturity from Cal. The first thing Cal does is say, surrender, stop, let's not fight. So the first thing he does after being pretty upset on the station is to say, let's do this, or let's talk it out before we do this. And And that's heartbreaking. Like, because it's such a sound argument, I think, from Cal. It's like, we'll just live together. And then the daughter, Kata says, just listen to them. But Bode can't do it. So one thing I found really beautiful about after you win the fight, right? So you're holding the lightsaber to him. And then, so I think the line of the daughter is the most important in that entire kind of speech, because he says, what will you do? Or what happens, when the Empire finds my little girl? Can you protect her? And Cal does not say yes. So that, to me, is why he did it. I can buy what you said as well. I think as these things are going on, I think Bode probably realizes more. I think him going after Marin is like a make or break, right? Because you either kill Marin and Cal right there, or you're dead. Because like Cal is not going to let you get away with that. Like you're not going to kill Marin on Cal's watch. So like that is make or break. But I think it's such a powerful, just a quick couple lines about the daughter. Because ultimately, as you were saying, like it all goes back to her. That's all he cares about. He likes Cal, but he likes the daughter more. So, can you protect her? And ultimately, and this could come into play in the third game, like Cal can't. If the Empire finds Tanalorr, they are screwed. It doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's just the promise or the belief that Tanalorr can hide them for a very long time. But if they were to be found, there's no promise that Cal can protect the daughter. And then obviously Bode, well, that's it then. Like, there's no other way. Then I have to do it. And so I just love that. I love that. And then, did you think Marin was going to die? Because I half thought it when he was choking her.
When he first picked her up, I was like, okay, Kyle is going to stop it. As it kept going and you heard bones crackling, I was like, oh, he's going to off her and like Kyle is going to lose it.
Yeah.
And it didn't go on realistically for like a long time.
Yeah. It felt like a long time.
I thought it was going to happen.
Yeah. It felt like a very long time that she was elevated and being choked.
Yes.
Like in the moment. But it really wasn't. It was probably like 10 seconds, but in the moment it was like, oh, she's dead. She's a goner. You're like her life flashed before my eyes. Yeah, like
yes.
as the game was going on, I became increasingly more worried that Marin was going to die because she really was his rock. Then when Seer died, I thought, okay, you can't kill Marin now because you killed Seer. But then when that happened, I thought, oh my God, I guess it's still possible. Like, you still could do it. Because, and I think that really could come into play in the third game. Depends on how they want to do it. You could assume that after this game, and then you have, like you said, I think they'll do another year gap, or they did 5 years. I think they'll do another multi-year gap. You can imagine Cal kind of like learns the balance, right? You could just say that in the game. Like, you don't have to. Or he could still be struggling. He could still struggle. Now, if he's still struggling and Marin is very much his anchor, if anything were to happen to her, he will be lost. It'll be an Anakin thing with Padme. Mm-hmm. So that worried me throughout this game, that Marin was in grave danger because she keeps being his rock, that he's able to like talk through things. And if you killed her, he would literally, like with Denvik, he'd flip out and you wouldn't be able to get him back. I don't know if you would do that in a third game, so I'm inclined to believe they may just go, he's not struggling anymore, with the light and dark. He's like figured it out. I think that's probably how they'll do it. But were you worried about her throughout the game?
Kinda. The last scene where Bode picked her up, that's probably the most worried I was.
Yeah.
But I'd say the moment that they kissed, I kind of felt like the first time I was like, she's not long for this world. But that was literally the only reason why, was because they were becoming a full thing. And normally in movies, shows, games, anytime comic books, they don't like romance to actually. They love the chase, but they don't like to depict the actual romance itself, like being fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
By the time you get that, it's normally the end of the story, and that's the end of whatever you're watching or playing.
Right.
So the fact that
does that lead you to believe they'll break up?
I would hope they wouldn't. I would like to see them go off of the beaten path and do something a little different and show more of being able to maintain a healthy relationship while not having it affect what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But he's like Disney with Han and Leia. Like, obviously they didn't make it. It's Disney was like, well, you know, we need to, whatever we need to do to these characters to make them more human, or really just kind of ruin them. That, again, that is kind of like, I don't know how much Disney is in the ear of Respawn, but do they say, or does Respawn feel an obligation? Because, like you said, couples don't work out in a lot of mediums, like in a lot of genres of games, movies, television. Obviously, like horror, you never want to like hook up. And oftentimes, these kind of things with Star Wars, name a couple couples that have made it out of it. Even if you want to do Reylo, one of them didn't even make it. Now that's disgusting, but you know what I mean? Like they really don't make it out. So I agree with you. Like, for once. Do your own thing. Do something that really has never been done. Keep them together the entirety of the third game. And if Cal dies, he dies. If they don't die, then let them. And again, that's another thing. Don't give it then to Disney. Because if you give it to Disney to tell a story after that, they'll break up or she'll die or, you know, something. Cal dies in 3, or you retire those two characters, and in your lore, in your head, they live happily ever after. Like, that's what I would want.
Yeah, same. And that's what... selfishly, because Kyle is such a good character, I don't want him to die.
Okay.
It is literally only because of the threat of Disney, his overlord,
Yeah.
that I am.
They're like the Empire.
They are the Empire. They are, and they continue to strike back constantly. So, I love the idea of Mira and Kyle, though. They are a powerful couple. They don't overstay their welcome. Anytime that they do interact with each other or have a moment, it feels like it means something.
Yeah.
Because it means something to Kyle, and it teaches him things and helps him find things within himself. And so after that, I think any concern I had for Mirren was literally because of like Kyle, really. Like, and just like both characters are top tier. Like, Kyle is my number 1 favorite character. Mirren's my number 2. Yeah, Mirren's my number 2. Yeah. So this is a sidebar. We aren't here yet, but there is a mission in this game where Mirren says, "Do you trust me?" And you start going through vortexes and portals, and you're flying. It was some of the most incredible feeling of a mission I think I've had in gaming in a while. Yeah. That felt pretty special. Yeah. And that made me like really see how powerful she was. Yeah. And that made it even more important when she got force choked, because with all of that power, she couldn't do anything.
That's the thing that I find so... I was thinking that too, like throughout the game, where she becomes increasingly more powerful. And it's like, man, you know, she takes out enemies, honestly, more with less effort than Cal. So I was I wasn't like trying to verse, you know, them against each other, but I was thinking like, you know, these Jedi, like she's more powerful than a lot of these Jedi. But at the end of the day, I think when Cal is going to kill Denvik, I think that's a really powerful scene with Merrin, because that shows it too, where it's like it can be easy for Jedi too. Really, it can be easy for Jedi if they give in to the dark side, right? If they give in to the dark side, they'd be more powerful than Merrin. If they don't, she's probably more equal with, you know, a lot of them than under. So then, yeah, and like you said, like when Bode is killing her, it feels good. Like it's a great scene. Well, it doesn't feel good, but it's a great scene in that like you buy it, because you show this kind of dynamic of, you know, the Night Sisters versus the Jedi. You're like, I can buy that even with all her power, she again does. Well, I don't know what's with that. Well, no, does he lift her up, or does she? I think she jumps at him, doesn't she? I think she goes.
When she gets choked?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she jumps off of something to like leap towards him. So really, the point is, don't leap in these games. See her, like just stay on the ground and like do more side to side work than going straight at them. But yeah, when he's force choking her, it's like, okay, you can again see this power dynamic that no Jedi or, you know, force users, they can be extremely powerful, and that all that power that Merrin has, you know, doesn't matter at the end of the day if something like that happens. So I think they just did, and we'll kind of end it just with, you know, the general game. I think they just did such a good job, like kind of all around. There's not too much negativity I've seen with the story. I think the only negative that I've seen people complaining about is using the High Republic, throwing the High Republic in instead of like anything else. So to kind of double down on like the Disney kind of stuff. I didn't mind it because I just felt like this game is so in its own pocket, at least right now. You know, you can judge it in the third game, or if he becomes a live action character, it can totally get really bad. But I think right now it lives, and they really are trying, I believe, Respawn, to make it live in this own little pocket where, yeah, they'll do High Republic, but don't, you know, it's okay. Like, it's not the show. It won't be any of these awful shows I'm sure we're going to get from Disney. Like, they're trying to do their own thing. So, you know, game on its own, or any highlights, you know, what'd you think? A summary.
It was a special game overall. There was a lot of moments, especially because Star Wars is one of my favorite franchises of all time, and it has been hard to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And this game really got over to me, not just from the story, but from the attention to detail, like on the different planets. How we talked about earlier, how Kyle just carries himself.
Yeah.
How the lore is fleshed out. Respawn really understands Star Wars, and they get it. And it just goes to show you, with the proper team in place, it still can be something special that everyone loves. Yeah. And that's what everything represented, down to the multiple stances, because there are stances in the lore. There are multiple stances in the lore that people use, and it did take advantage of some of those stances that are in the lore. Yeah. Stuff with the, you know, being able to customize Kyle, like for people who like customization. That was a very big thing, and I thought that they did a really good job for what you could do. In fact, I didn't have any disappointments on customizations other than you couldn't like make one blade one color and the other blade the other color.
Yeah. We talked about that.
And that probably was the only thing, and it wasn't really a disappointment. It was just like, it's not in this game, but that's okay. Like, and the blaster stance, the innovation, the storytelling, the gameplay, even like, I don't know if Fallen Order made me just a better person at the game, but Jedi Knight felt way easier to me.
Yeah. There's only the Bode fight at the end and Vader. Mm-hmm. Those were the two that got. And Vader was more of like, I'd make stupid mistakes, or when he would bring in the debris to throw at you, he did that so fast you had to dodge just at the right time. I died probably 10 or so times on Vader and maybe like 3 on Bode. But beyond that, I think I died like 2 or 3 times in the entirety. Like, I was so much better. And I don't know. I like to believe. I don't know if you can scientifically prove it. I like to believe I was just better as a player. I don't know if it was easier. I did feel like some of those mini bosses, like the bounty hunter kind of guys you'd randomly find, I felt like they were easier, but I don't know. I actually, maybe it's because Fallen Order is the learning period. You have to try to figure out these enemies, and going into Survivor, you're just kind of carrying those skills over. Right?
And I think that was a big factor, because the same thing with me. Bode, for me, it was Bode. Vader, I died maybe once. Actually, Dagon killed me a lot more.
I didn't die once from any of the 3 Dagon fights, and I was so proud of myself. So proud.
I didn't die until the last Dagon fight, and that's where I kept struggling. And it was, some of my deaths was purely because of frustration. You need timing, and you need parrying.
If you can parry, you can go through the whole game. I think like parrying is the most important thing.
And that's what I used to get me through the entire game, was parrying.
Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest thing was for me to remember that. I'm a person that can get frustrated. So if I get frustrated, I just instantly press the button again or like respond my go again. And I'm like not using any sense of logic. And that's what made Dagon so bad for me more than anything. Once I stepped away for 10 minutes, came back, I was fine. But one thing that I did love about this game as well, and I tweeted it out, was that there were probably about 5 different times where I thought that this was the end of the game, only for it not. Yeah. And it never felt like it dragged on at any point.
Mm-hmm.
Like after the Dagon fight, like before the Dagon fight, I'm like, okay, this is the big game. Like this is it. Then we beat him. Then it's something else. And then we get Vader, and I'm like, okay, this is it. And they're like, no. And then that's something else in this betrayal. Then we get, and I'm like, and I was just like, it just kept going and it kept going, and it was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think like the Dagon thing, that definitely builds it. I think I had remembered or I had talked about like the length of this game versus Fallen Order, so I was like, so I was kind of like going back and forth in my head where it's like, okay, if the Dagon fight, if this is it, this is a lot shorter than I think it should be. So it probably isn't, but it definitely feels like it is. So you have that. When they're celebrating, like with the compass and they're saying, to Tanalorr, it's like you could end it there. I also then really wasn't sure when Seer dies and they go on the ship. Right before they start like talking about how could we not sense Bode, you could have ended it there. Very like Empire Strikes Back like that's exactly what it would have been. And I was considering it. It was like, oh man, would you end it here? But yeah, no, it never. Those are the best to me. Where it's like, because that just shows to me whenever it's done right. Where I think some of it is even on us. We think the game is over, and we also really don't want it to be over. So then when we continue it, we're like thrilled. We're really happy. And a lot of that comes from the product, right? If the product is really good versus if the product is dragging on and you're not really into it, and then it ends, and we think it's the ending and it keeps going, the reception is not the same. So it takes something, I think, being high quality, where it's like, yeah, you could end it here. I'd be okay with it, but I'd love it if you kept going. Oh, and they kept going. Oh, it feels, and they did it again. You could overdo it, but I don't think they did that. So, yeah, I felt the same way. I think there's a couple times, specifically after Bode and Seer dies. When Seer dies, I thought you really could end it here. It would be just like episode 5 and pick it up, and Bode's the villain of the third game. I think you could have done that. And that's
honestly what I thought when, even after you go to the, like, in that Imperial base, and you're getting through it when Bode escapes, and you meet back up with the crew, I thought that was another ending. Because I'm like, okay, we tried to catch him. He escaped. Next game. Nope, not at all. And I was like, it was so many different points in the game where you could have had a definite feeling of finality to it.
Yeah. I agree. Great game. I mean, honestly, talking about it more, fleshing out the details, I definitely like it more, I'd say, than I did an hour or two ago. I don't think it's my game of the year, but I think it's going to be in a top 5, top 10, like easily. Right now, top 5 for sure. I think it deserves. I think the performance thing is sad, and it's definitely an issue, and they shouldn't get away with it, and I don't think people are letting them get away with it. But if you took away those performance issues, this is a top-tier Star Wars game, top-tier game, what we wanted. One of the better Star Wars games, one of the better games of the year. So I think they did it, They did it. I think that this is going to be that game for them where it's like the next Star Wars game. It's going to be hard to top what they did here. Yeah.
It's going to be hard.
The finality, finishing it off, I think that can help push it. Because if you kill a Cal or Marin or something in 3, that has like weight, and if you kind of center the game that that's going to happen, like when you're developing it, that could maybe just carry the whole thing. Or maybe this is where the Emperor comes. We talked about that for this game. Vader has failed now twice, technically. The Inquisitors failed. When is it time? Well, I mean, Vader went there to kill Seer and destroy the archives, and he kind of did both. So I don't know if he failed, but like Cal is still succeeding in what he's doing. So, at what point does the man in charge, kind of like put an end and say, like, I'm done with this garbage. This has gone on too long.
And that would push it over the edge too, to have Palpatine personally
Just
come to
end
kill
it.
you.
Yeah.
When do we ever see Palpatine personally handle anyone?
Star Killer is maybe the only one.
Star Killer, and he did fight Maul, but he
Yes.
didn't kill Maul.
Yeah.
And so, other than those two, you've never seen him like, okay, I have to get out my chair and handle this. Like, I think that would be special. I think that would be something that would catch everyone off guard. Like,
Yeah.
oh, he's here. And that would even more put the fear of God in the player, because you're like Kyle Kestis and you're the player. You're like, he's not making it out of this.
Yeah.
There's no way he is the definition of unlimited power.
He coined the term. Yeah. Oh man.
So
well,
that would be a case where I'm going like,
yeah.
yeah.
I think you center it on Palpatine eventually, like not for the whole game, but like, if that's one of your selling points as a developer, one of Cal or Marin or even Grease. I think Grease is awesome. I think he's, in this game he's more well-rounded, not just comedy, right? You kill any of those three, it's going to be pretty special or pretty interesting. Well, we got any last thoughts? I think it was great.
That was it for me, man. I love the game. I enjoyed it a lot. Right now it's definitely a contender for game of the year for me. I know right after I played it, it was game of the year for me. And now that I've taken myself a little time to think, I'm like, it's definitely in contention, but I don't know if I can.
I think I've liked it more since I stopped. I think I'd be willing to put it. Oh man, I don't want to give it away. I think I'd be willing to put it top 3 for sure. And I've played probably 9, 10 games so far this year. I think it's in the top 3, maybe even top. I could say it's maybe top 2 even, but I don't think it's my favorite. It's probably going to be Undisputed, to be honest with you. But I'm sure we'll talk about it, once we get to the end of the year for kind of like the Game Awards and all that stuff. I'm sure we'll bring Star Wars back up. And hopefully 3-4 years, not 5 or 6, we get, the finishing game in the trilogy. Let us know in the comments below what you guys thought of the game. If you beat it, which I assume if you watched this, you did beat it. Thank you so much for watching. This was a lot of fun, I think, for both of us to do. And maybe if this does well, we could do it for boatloads of upcoming games. I think spoiler casts are pretty fun to do in general. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one.